Hello and welcome back to our sort of realistic North American themed metropolitan area of Riverview. This is actually the 10th episode of Riverview, and I'm so happy to see just how much we've been able to grow it into what is starting to feel like a real-life metro area. In recent episodes, we've been focusing on developing massive new infrastructure to meet the ever-growing demands of the sprawling city, as well as developing this massive cargo port and job center here in the northern outskirts of the metro area. And as we check the creatively named Port of Riverview, we're approaching 4,000 job positions up here, which is really nice, and it has helped bring unemployment rates down throughout the entire metro area. So as a result of this, our effective unemployment rate is really low, sitting at around 10%, and it's actually falling currently due to new jobs still being spawned throughout the city. And if we check the city statistics, we'll also see that historically, unemployment is now the lowest in absolute terms that it's been for at least the past year. These record low levels of unemployment, coupled with the fact that the metro area has become very, very expensive to live in. As you guys can probably see, we are plagued by high rents and high mortgage burdens throughout the city, has really created an environment with very, very strong demand for just about everything, but especially residential demand is something we'll need to try and satisfy. So that's the theme of today's video. We're gonna expand the metro area by providing new zoning so that there are fresh building lots for people in the city, but also by upzoning existing areas. And as always, if you enjoy my content, I would really appreciate a like. And if you don't want to miss out on future content, consider subscribing. Most of my viewers aren't subscribed. Thanks in advance. So we are gonna do some pretty big things in an attempt to satisfy some of this demand and just overall grow the metro area. And the biggest thing is probably gonna be a pretty substantial revamp of Chestnut that I've planned. Essentially taking it from town to city. But before we go ahead with that as a major change, there are a few changes I'd like to make to the main island, because like I said, we're now 10 episodes into Riverview, which I think is quite cool, but it also means that some of these areas, they haven't really seen any changes since the very beginnings of the city, and it's one of the very first cities I started when I got early access to City Skylines 2. And I think it kind of shows there are at least a few things I want to change. We've got two neighborhoods here that kind of overlap. We've got Orchard Peak and Bedford Gardens, and currently they have quite an interesting mix of density. So alongside Madison Street, which is one of the major arterials of the inner city of Riverview, we've got lots of medium density developments alongside the street, which I quite like that look and will continue to have something like this in place. As we move just like one layer away from Madison Street onto these smaller lanes, the density level drops to a mixture of a few medium density houses, a ton of row housing, and even some very, very nice older low density houses in between. I don't mind the area, it looks alright, but I think there are a couple of things I'd like to change. One of them being that the street layout right now is perhaps a little boring at places. I think we can spice it up and make it a bit more interesting. But more importantly, I want to compress the street layout a bit, because I think that there's quite a bit of distance between these lanes here, and it is very much an old inner city area of Riverview, or at least it's supposed to be. So I kind of feel that if we're gonna go for these lanes here that are kind of narrow, then at least I want them to be much more compressed. I want the city blocks basically to be smaller, and then have continue to have row housing developments, but have smaller lots, because these guys have pretty extensive backlots, and I'm sure that's nice, but I don't really think it fits given the density that we now have in downtown Riverview. So this calls for two things. First up, we're gonna revamp the road layout here in Bedford Gardens, make it hopefully a little more interesting and a little more tight in the size of the blocks at least. But we're also gonna upzone and try to densify it as much as possible. I don't mind these areas with low density, because I imagine they are very, very desirable in a real life example. but I just feel that Bedford Gardens is a little too close to downtown to have any low density, so we're probably gonna upzone the whole thing to a mixture between row housing and some medium density stuff. Might even try to squeeze in a few offices and industrial just to mix it up. And then as we move out to Orchard Peak, we might keep some of these low density houses, as we're starting to gain a bit of distance from downtown. Before I do anything, the first part of the Bedford Gardens revamp is gonna have to be an upgrade to Sunnyside Avenue, because we've got a terrible traffic jam here. Tons of pedestrians, even more cars and vehicles here on the western portion of Sunnyside Avenue. Here as well, where it intersects with the Magnolia Highway, which is sort of like an expressway that serves the western portion of the city of Riverview. Gonna have to revamp this and get rid of these not so North American roundabouts as well. They don't really smell or taste like freedom, so we'll skip those and get something else in place. More lanes, probably more lanes, more traffic lights, and after that upgrade, which hopefully solves this issue, I'm gonna need to drag like a main road through Bedford Gardens and then start the upgrade process. So let's get going. Alright, I guess the traffic just has to get a chance to settle. Anyways, we've got our new layout for Bedford Gardens. I'm just gonna quickly adjust the zone so that it's Bedford Gardens and Orchard Peak meet here on Pacific Street. Now, before we get zoning, where we'll be implementing a couple of different techniques to get it just the way we want to, I'm gonna upgrade a bit of the traffic infrastructure here. Hopefully that might just alleviate the future traffic issue that we are definitely gonna be seeing here. So let's upgrade much of this major avenue here to a 6-laner. I'm gonna go all the way down here actually. I think that's fine. I'm expecting a lot of traffic here. Let's see. We've also got... We'll grab our 5-lane asymmetrical road just to get another lane on as such. And I'm gonna grab the 4-lane road and upgrade these segments as well, just to get some more traffic flow. There you go. So Sunnyside Avenue got a major upgrade, and that's the same for Madison Street. But it is going to be interesting to see just how traffic is gonna be handled in this area, because it's quite a complex thing now. So for the zoning, the majority of Bedford Gardens, as we discussed earlier in the episode, I want to be row house developments. But alongside Garnet Street here, which is the major arterial of the area, we're gonna go for some medium density and mixed density usage instead. And I'm gonna try and use the let's see, our pavement path to enforce different types of zoning. So for instance, I don't really want zoning alongside this one-way road. I'd much rather just have the zoning conform to the 2 alleys here. And in cases such as this, I'm just gonna use the path here to get exactly what I want. Because if we implement that, then we can actually enforce the zoning. Oh, let's see if I can just make that a bit more pretty. Something like that. And we lost zoning from the one-way road that I don't want. Instead, should now be able to zone much nicer row houses alongside these alleys. It's the same trick I've sort of used down here, just to ensure that we don't... I would like the row houses to conform to all these parallel alley roads. Hopefully that's gonna create a nice look. Anyways, we're zoning some bigger stuff here alongside Garnet Street. The mixed housing units usually work pretty well when zoned on corners. They kind of conform to corners a little better. So I'm gonna try and do that as much as possible. It just creates a bit of a better look. Let's see, we'll go for this. This should be a pretty good start. Then I'll like some medium density housing mixed in, as well as some low rent housing. Create a few towers here with low rent housing as well. And as per usual, I'm trying to avoid having the same zoning size with the same zoning type for too much, because it's gonna result in duplication, of course. So we don't want that. For the high density businesses, the high density commercial, basically, I'm just gonna sprinkle some of that in as well. But these buildings can actually grow quite big, so I'm gonna try and be a bit cautious with them, because I really don't want those huge type of developments here at all. So I think we're gonna start with this type of zoning alongside Garnet Street, and then we can always change it and reassess if necessary. For these smaller lanes, I am going to zone row housing, and my way of doing it is going to be, for instance, zoning one side to begin with, and then as these start developing, I'll zone the other side. So I'll zone alongside Elizabeth Lane, hit play, and then when the row house developments start, spawning in, I'm going to zone on the opposite side, and hopefully that means that we can get some row houses facing Emerson Lane. Sometimes it's a little more tricky than that, but that's what we're gonna try at least. And yeah, it's one of my gripes with the game basically is that it is a bit finicky trying to get this to work, which is a bit of a shame, because as long as we don't have any mods, we are of course confined to zoning basically. And I think in this case I am going to create a little path here. Actually, here is probably all I need. I can remove this one, and that's gonna allow me to do some row house zoning there as well. So just gonna move throughout and zone the whole thing up, and then we'll see how it looks. Okay, so that was a lot of zoning, a lot of landscaping, mixed in a bit of medium density as well, just to kind of make it a little more interesting, this area. Pretty happy with how Bedford actually turned out, as well as this nicely named triangle park that I made here on the border between Bedford and Orchard Peak. Generally pretty happy with how this looks. For this major intersection here, I ended up adding some higher density stuff as well, which I think makes pretty good sense. And yeah, Riverview is really built up by now, and I love how we've got many different density levels at play here. I think that's very interesting. Unfortunately, it was really tricky working on this. I often feel that I have to kind of fight the zoning mechanics of the game instead of like really enjoying it. So I'm really hopeful that they'll add some updates to it, because it's a bit of a pain trying to do anything but, you know, straight angles and 90-degree angles, and it's such a shame, because I'd like to think there's potential for more here at least. Anyways, we've got a bit of a diff wave going on and not nearly enough hearses to actually respond to it, so probably gonna have to fix that at some point in time at least. But right now I'm in the mood for continuous expansion, so that's what we are really just gonna continue pushing forward. My plan is to have 3 cities on this map very closely knit together, and that's gonna require a 3rd skyline. Currently we've got Riverview, obviously, then we've got East Riverview, which I think also has a very distinct skyline, and then we've got the town of Chestnut. But as we zoom out, Chestnut pretty much just looks like continuous suburban sprawl from Riverview. And that's not really my intention. I would like it to be sort of a city in its own right. So I'm going to do some upzoning and upgrades to Chestnut, but I think I'm also gonna try and remove we've got forestry industry here, remove this, and then actually make a 3rd downtown right here in between all this interstate infrastructure we've got here. I'm hopeful that's gonna look interesting at least. Now I'd also like to try and make a little marina as well using the pavement paths, and I'm not sure how or if this is gonna work, but I am going to give it a go at least. So we're gonna create a bit of a waterfront here with some keys for this new downtown area we'll be getting here. And I've got an idea which I hope is gonna make sense. For now we're gonna get the keys in place. Then we're gonna just put down the basic roads, and as always I'm gonna use the 4-lane road because it's just a little easier to actually make keys with this major road in place. There you go. And then I'm gonna try and turn this into a key wall, of course, so we can have our marina. Now let's see how it's gonna go. Making our key walls, always a little finicky in game. Gonna try a line as much as I can with the dual yellow lines, because that usually makes it a little easier to actually create the key walls. Alright, and then we are gonna grab the same 4-lane road. And let's see, almost no elevation change, so that is perfect. And it seems we've got a bit of water clipping through over here, so I'm kind of curious to see if it's actually gonna work over here. It's probably isn't, but we'll see. Oh, it's all right. Although there's a bit of an elevation, so we'll see if we can just lower that ever so slightly. Something like this. Cool. Before I let the water in, I'm gonna make sure to actually upgrade to the type of roads I want to use. So I think we are just gonna go for a very basic type of road here. Cool. And next up, I'm just gonna let the water in real slowly to avoid any flooding. So I'm just gonna create a bit of an opening here. Also gonna come in here, select place multiple, and go for I'm gonna remove only matching type as a check mark, and that's gonna allow me to remove all the trees that are now down here, because obviously I don't really want that. Gonna let the water in and settle before I move in, so I'm just gonna let the simulation run for a bit. Alright, so let's see if we can make this work. Gonna grab the pavement path, go to the smallest elevation step, and I probably only need to be a couple of meters above sea level. Otherwise it's gonna look weird with the boats. Well, there are no boats, but if there are any boats, then these paths shouldn't be too tall. So I also need to sort of try and connect it up though to the actual road, and that's gonna be very, very tricky. So I'm just gonna give it a go and just kind of place something here and then see if we can make this work. So that's probably a little too far. Can we... Oh, it turns this into like a fully elevated segment. So I can't connect to this road because then I can't zone here on the other side. Gotta keep that in mind. But I can connect here and just go out by like 52 meters. It's not too steep. And then I'll continue it and just see. So that's 46, which I think is fine. It's close enough. There we go. We've got a bit of a connection now. And now for the actual piers, well, I mean, I guess we're just gonna go out. Let's see if we can find the node here as well, and we'll just make sure it's aligned. And we'll create another one. And I'm hopeful we can establish a bit of symmetry here, but it's all right if we don't. And then I'm just gonna try and create these smaller piers as well, where you would have boats and equipment and whatnot. I guess these are gonna be a bit smaller actually. Yeah, I'm interested in seeing how this is actually gonna look when it's all done. But we'll see, we'll see. It's not too bad actually. I'm fearing there isn't quite enough space to actually navigate your boat in here, so I'm gonna try and remove a few of these just to make it a little more interesting. Let's see, we'll keep these ones and make sure we've got a bit of symmetry. Right, why not? There you go. I kind of like that. I think it's the best we can do currently with what we've got available in the game at least. So I'm gonna have to fix this crazy terrain we've got, and I'm very happy with the slope terrain tool. It really gives us good possibilities of fixing this with the nicest slope we can get. So selecting it, I'm going to right click up here, and then I'm just going to drag the terrain all the way up here. Yeah, I'm gonna try that again. Like I said, I'm gonna right click up here and then drag from down here. This time using a bit more caution. Look how well it's working. Oh, that's much better. And then I'm just gonna come in with the soften terrain tool and soften out some of the differences between these slopes I've been making. And this should pretty much give us the most smooth terrain and the gradient that we can have, and it almost looks flat. Anyways, enough fiddling around with terraforming and this thing, which unfortunately is not gonna turn into a marina just because I say it is. It's time to get building. feels like I've built an entirely new city, which I guess I sort of have actually, and I'm pretty happy with how this turned out. The marina is actually looking pretty cool, I feel. I know it's not functional at all, but I kind of like it. And then I went for this dual one-way road setup here to kind of simulate a large avenue. Placed more bushes hand placed here that I'm never gonna do that again, is what I'm trying to say. But otherwise, pretty happy with how this turned out. I'm gonna need you guys' help because I don't really feel Chestnut is like a suitable name for this city. Now it was more fitting for a smaller town with lots of trees. That's kind of how the original name came to be. So if you've got a suggestion for the name of this city and maybe a bit of story, then let me know in the comments and I'll go through them. I know that I've also asked for some naming suggestions for the port, so don't worry, I haven't been noting down tons of really cool suggestions, and I'm thinking we might have a vote actually about it. So thank you all so much for that as well. And if you noticed, I started having major flooding issues while I was building the new city, so I sort of panicked, and my attempt to try and alleviate it was to create this new lake here while completely blocking access here, but also expanding some of the rivers, the river down here. I just made it wider and deeper. And I also removed the dam here, and I'm hopeful that was one of the main issues, that the dam we had down here in conjunction with the addition of the new port and widening of this river substantially to support the new cargo traffic is what actually caused this issue. But we'll see. I'm going to reintroduce the cargo stuff now, and hopefully the water level is gonna be fine. And the way I'm going to do it is I'm of course going to widen this, but then I'm going to place down the let's see, the narrow seaway, and then I'm going to make the actual river as small as I possibly can. So I'm gonna make sure that the river really hugs the seaway here, which is actually quite easy to do because you can just terraform all the way up to it. So I'm just gonna showcase that in a second. We need a bit of water here, obviously. There you go. And then of course I need to establish my cargo routes. Great, so I've got the routes all set up now, which means I can come in here with some terraforming, and as you guys can see, I can get real close to the actual shipping lane. So that's what I'm gonna have to do that, and then I'm gonna just try and see if I can smoothen it out and make it look all right. But I really don't dare take any chances again, because I really sort of panicked for a moment there. I really couldn't fix the water level at all. So, and it took a long time to actually get it fixed by just completely stopping the flow of water and creating this artificial lake. So yeah, I don't want to try that again. But we'll see. I'm going to be monitoring the flow of water very closely to avoid a similar issue. Anyways, that's really a wrap for this quite long episode by now. It's been a lot of fun, and I'm really looking forward to what suggestions you guys might have for Chestnut, so that we give this third city a more proper name, maybe a bit of a backstory. And as I said, I have kept in mind all the nice suggestions for the port setup, so we'll get some naming going there as well. As an additional little announcement, I am starting to explore starting a new city series and maybe doing some standalone builds to kind of just mix it up and have some other stuff run alongside Riverview. So I hope you guys will be looking forward to that. Have a very nice day or evening, whatever it is where you're from, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.